All right, at this particular moment, I'd like you to grab a glass of milk as we enter the land of dairy. Now, let's look at some statistics here touching on dairy sector. Starting off, if we may just project that 14% of Kenya's agricultural GDP is contributed by dairy. Look at that. Small-scale farmers produce actually 80% of Kenya's milk, and if you were to revamp the sector, that will be quite critical, looking at the small-scale farmers and how they are managing that particular sector. Apart from that, moving on swiftly, 939, close to 1 million households are rare dairy cattle. That is quite minimal, comparing that we are, of course, noting that it's households, but you have a population of 50 million people. Can you encourage more people to rear dairy? That's another question. Okay, 1.299 million households rear sheep for milk. Ooh, yeah, that's quite interesting. Sheep milk. Have I taken sheep milk? I've only taken goat milk. Anyway, time will tell. Maybe with scarcity, we need to be more innovative. Apart from that, the number of goats in Kenya stands at, is it 8 million? The number of sheep stands at 19 million. The number of goats, 28 million. And camels, 4.6 million. And if you remember the vetting of one of the cabinet secretaries, when he was asked his net worth, he mentioned also the number of camels that he has. All right, that's where it stands. And apart from that also, camels are quite important. I don't know whether you've taken camel meat. Very, very delicious. Dairy production, 5.28 billion liters of milk produced in Kenya annually. Then 75% of milk is from cows. Ask yourself, where is the 25 coming from? Of course, goat milk, camel milk. Interesting. 1.8 million smallholder dairy farmers. Also, it's important to note. Now, Kenyans consume, Kenyans consume close to 110 liters per person per year. But that aside, 71% of milk produced is marketed, 5% of sales across the fence. You remember when your mom used to send you, go get milk from kwa kina nani? Exactly, across the fence. 55% is sold to the informal segment and 40% to the formal segment. So how can we make sure the sector is becoming more formal even more? Now, talking about consumption, 110 liters per person per year. I don't know whether that is enough or not. I think KDB MD will tell us whether that is enough or we should drink more milk as a country. As at 2019, Dairy Circles had a membership of 485,000 and 670 dairy societies and unions in Kenya, 20 formal dairy companies, only 500 milk dispensers licensed by Kenya Dairy Board. That looks like a small number, 500, serving a population of close to 50 million. How can we improve in that sector? Well, now, apart from that, as we finish up, do we have an extra board in regards to the data? Let us take a look at total milk production. It stands at 5.5. That's 5.5 billion liters, and from cows 3.9, and from camels 1.16, got 273 million liters, and sheep 107 million liters. This data comes from, of course, Kenya Dairy Board in collaboration with Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Well, I'm joined by Margaret Kibogi, who is the Kenya Dairy Board Managing Director. Welcome to the show. Are we drinking enough milk as a country?
Thank you very much, Amos, and really nice to be here to talk about issues dairy. And one of the things I would like to mention, of course, is we are the regulators of the sector. And when we're talking about regulating the sector, we're looking at areas of regulation, promotion, and of course, issues related to the dairy sector to ensure that we focus on growth of the dairy sector.
Okay.
Drinking enough milk, yes, we say we are drinking, but we need to drink much more. Of course, at the moment we are at 110 liters as indicated and projected in the figures, but the global target is 200 liters per person. So we need to continue, and we have seen that growth.
Okay.
When you look at the growth for the demand for milk as a country is at 10%. However, the production, of course, is less than the 10%. So we need to produce more because the demand for that milk in this country is higher.
How do we produce more?
Of course, many interventions on how we can produce more. We know the challenges the farmers are going through. One of it, of course, is accessibility of quality and availability of feed. Both the protein, carbohydrates, we still have challenges, and of course more so during the drought, like right now. Farmers are not able to access sufficient feed, hence it affects the production of milk in the country.
Okay.
So therefore we've intensified, both national and the county governments are working on, of course, conservation of feed. When you have the excess during the rainy seasons, you can be able to conserve enough feed or sufficient feed for your animals. But we still have challenges in terms of accessing sufficient feed for animals in the country. Hence, the productivity is not growing as much as, of course, the demand for milk in the country. The market for milk in the country is very high.
Yes.
For the various products. We have various products, milk products. We have, of course, the UHT, which constitute 85% of what we formally process in the country. Okay. And of course, 15% going to the various other products, like the cheese, like butter.
Yes.
Yeah, and the various milk products that we have, which is not sufficient. We're not able to meet that demand for the product. So we need to accelerate the production so that we can be able to also export to the milk deficit neighbors and of course to other markets in the world where the demand is there.
All right, definitely. Yes. And before we come to that issue of small scale, 80% of the milk we consume coming from small scale farmers. There's an item here on the challenges facing the dairy sector. We just want to look at this. What do you think are the challenges facing the dairy sector? Have you reared a cow yourself? Have you tried keeping a dairy cow? I know people have struggled, but question is, what are the challenges? Let's take a look at this item before we return to the interview.
Producing 55,000 liters of milk per day, down from 80,000 liters. In its projections, the cooperative has targeted to hit 100,000 liters per day, but due to the harsh drought conditions, the pasture for animals reduced, forcing the company to rely on Poland and dairy meal, which are expensive. 60-year-old Charles Njoroge, who is a member of Mukurweini Dairy, has since resorted to producing silage for his 20 dairy cows. Silage is pasture grass that has been pickled. It is a method used to preserve the pasture for cows and sheep to be eaten later when natural pasture isn't good enough, like in the dry season. The grasses are cut and then fermented to retain as much nutrients as possible, including sugars and proteins.
Sijaona miaka ingine mbaya kama huu. Kwa sababu tumekuwa na kiangazi muda mrefu sana. Lakini kwa sababu ya ile experience ambayo nimekuwa na hii mwaka yote, nimekuwa nikihifadhi, nimejifunza mambo ya kuhifadhi majani. Kwa sababu hata ingawa miaka ingine haikuwa baya, bado kulikuwa na wakati unakuta kuna kiangazi inaenda pengine kwa miezi 2-3. Wakati huo ukanifunza nijifunze mambo ya kuhifadhi majani, ndio wakati kuna excess mimi nahifadhi majani ya kukula wakati kuna shortage.
Njoroge says Israel has used silage to take care of the needs of livestock keepers. Times have, however, not been kind to Njoroge, as he was forced to sell off 5 of his dairy cows at a lower cost. Njoroge has, however, been able to sustain the remaining herd of 20 cows since he has started producing silage. The venture has also opened up new opportunities, as he now sells silage to other farmers at 18 shillings per kilogram. Originally, Njoroge planned to produce 300 liters of milk per day, but this has been cut down to 180 liters per day due to the persistent drought. He also hopes that he will one day be able to grow his herd.
Wale ng'ombe wote ambao niko na ng'ombe 20. Wale nakamua saa hii ni ng'ombe 8. na napata napata maziwa kati ya kilo 160, 160 and 180 liters kila siku. Hao ng'ombe wengine ni wale ambao natarajia wapandishwa, wengine wako na mimba na wale wadogo. Kama singekuwa na hii kiangazi, unajua wakati niliona kiangazi inaendelea ni kama hii kiangazi inaendelea sana, kuna ng'ombe wengine ambao nimeuza. Kwa hivyo saa hii nilikuwa natarajia kuwa na kilo kutoka 250 mpaka 300 kwa siku. Kwa hivyo wale ng'ombe nimeuza ndio nimefanya ile maziwa napata kwa kila siku iende chini.
Another farmer, Rose Wandia, opted to invest in 180 shillings to irrigate her 4-acre farm and produce napier grass for her dairy cows. The 42-year-old said though her investment in installing an electrical pump was an expensive venture, she has been able to sustain milk production, earning 45 shillings per litre of milk.
Na juu ya hiyo kiangazi nikaonelea ya kwamba afadhali nijitolee nianze kutafuta kwenye naweza toa maji. Nikaonelea nipandishe maji kwa stima ndio nilime zaidi na ng'ombe wangu wasikuwe na wakati wa kiangazi, ndio nisikuwe na changamoto mingi. Kwa kupandisha maji hiyo gharama iligharimu 180,000 kupandisha maji. Ndio tunapandisha maji na mfereji wa inchi moja ndio maji ya kuwe mingi. Juu kuna ng'ombe ziko na mimba na panga kuwa na nimenunua hata ng'ombe zaidi ya hizi ndio niwe mkulima hodari, na ndio mapato yangu yazidi kupanda ndio niweze kufundisha kulipia watoto school fees. Niko na kijana ako university na mwingine anamaliza stand 8 sai.
The cooperative's chairman, Mutai Mohika, says they have since exhausted the silage that they have produced. The dairy is now looking to buy hay from Western Kenya, which has been experiencing better rainfall.
It is the consumers that have reduced the rate of consumption. If a family was taking 2 packets or 3 packets and there is no money to buy, to procure, they have gone maybe into polage, and milk clearly could be left on it to the small kids. So instead of the 3 packets, maybe they are buying 1 packet. Yeah. So that can also be a determinant.
Mutai urged the national government to ensure that dams are dug so that farmers can stop relying on rainwater amid changing weather patterns. Earlier this month, the Ministry of Agriculture released 350,000 shillings to enable farmers sell their dying livestock to Kenya Meat Commission as part of mitigation against the ongoing drought. Agutu Rosa, KTN News.
Well, you can see there are farmers are tackling drought and trying to find innovative ways of dealing with this drought issue. Margaret, as a regulator, so far have you been able to quantify how much this drought is hurting dairy farming?
Yes. What we do is we monitor the formal sector in terms of the processing, what goes into the formal sector for processing. For us to meet the market demand, we must at least process 80 million liters every month. But we have noted a drop from the 80 to about 61 million liters on monthly basis. When you look at the trends from the beginning of this year, the drought started the beginning of the year, and in the month of March, we had actually challenges even having milk in the shelves. This, of course, was highlighted in the media, but thereafter, there were short rains, not long rains, the month of April to August. So we were able to recover, but not enough, of course, to have stocks. Usually we build stocks in between the month of May to August, which we normally use it during the dry seasons like now. However, this year, we were not able to build sufficient stocks because the rains were too low and we had experienced very severe drought at the beginning of the year. Usually also we expect short rains in the month of October, but in certain areas there's been some rains, like in the Rift Valley, the milk producing areas like the Rift Valley, but in certain areas, they've of course experienced extreme drought. This has affected production of milk because farmers are not able to access feed. They are not able to access, of course, water. And the areas that are affected is the Asal regions like Kajiado, where we've been getting about over 20,000 milk daily, collecting about over 20,000 liters on daily basis. Now we're not able to collect anything from that area because of drought.
Okay.
So drought has really affected our sector.
Okay.
The beauty is in certain areas within the country, they've been able to embrace conservation of animal feed, that is a silage, and there's been consistency in their production in certain areas. And this is what we want to build up to other areas so that we have consistency in production of milk across the country.
Okay.
Certain areas are highly impacted, negatively impacted, and certain regions like Meru areas and areas of Kiambu, they still have feed because they conserve. They practice what is called intensive milk production. Those on open grazers are the ones who are really affected by the drought.
Okay, and briefly, as we finish up, looking at all these challenges, as the regulator, moving forward, even some of the solutions that you're saying, those in going intensive way of production, is there support that you're giving to these farmers, especially majority of farmers who supply Kenya, the 80% small-scale farmers? Briefly, as we finish up.
Government, of course, have come up with various initiatives and interventions. One of it, of course, that is long-term is opening up government land for commercialization, where cooperatives can use government land to produce their feed so that it is sustainable in the long run. They can be able to formulate their own feed for their farmers. When you look at, of course, the setup of the dairy sector, it's a very organized sector with many cooperatives. We have over 670 cooperatives. That is really good. And through that cooperative movement, they can be able to access government land, grow their fodder, and be able to sell to their members. That way, they'll be able to mitigate issues of drought or any other calamities in that sector, and that way they'll have consistency. The other thing, of course, will address the issue of cost, because when you produce your own feed, you can be able to manage the cost of milk production, and that way you'll be able to manage, because what we have done in our regulations, in terms of the legal framework, we gazetted the dairy industry regulations in 2021, and some of those areas now we have guaranteed minimum returns. So the issues of prices have been able to be managed through the regulations. And of course, we have the quality-based payment systems, where if you are going to produce better quality, you earn more, a premium in the areas of your sales of milk.
Okay.
Certain areas, of course, is government opens up, like during the period when we had a challenge at the beginning of the year, we opened for imports for feed.
Okay.
For a period of which was gazetted and was zero rated, to be able to support the dairy farmer, to bring down the cost of feed and availability.
All right.
Yes.
Definitely very important. And we are glad that there are interventions to make sure that our dairy sector is staying afloat and even growing further. Thank you very much, Margaret Kibogi, Kenya Dairy Board Managing Director, giving us the brief, the ins and outs of the interventions for the dairy sector amidst the drought, but most importantly, what is being done to make sure the sector's vibrancy is growing. At this particular moment, we take a short break. When we come back, we have some interesting conversation touching on sustainability and COP27. Stay tuned.